Pugil Sticks and the Battle Against the Jamaican. Many days in basic training were the same, spending hours drilling and marching, ensuring we were in step as a group, forming a cohesive unit. However, some days we did something that was interesting and completely different. The Pugil Sticks Day was one of these days. The good news was that the training area was right across the street from the barracks, so not a long march. The day was filled with hand-to-hand combat training, bayonet training, and pugil stick battles. Now, I didn't learn 100 ways to kill someone, but I did learn some combat techniques I might use someday against a zombie apocalypse, especially the slash and stab of the rifle with a bayonet at the end. After this training with bayonet, it was on to the pugil sticks. This is a long stick with a big ball pad on either end. We practiced different techniques all morning, for example, how to block the opponent if he is swinging it at you like a baseball bat, or the proper stance for standing your ground. The rumors led us to believe we would do some one-on-one battling in the afternoon. As many of you know, I am not a big guy, only about 5'10", and I really don't have what you might call a fighting spirit. So I was looking forward more to watching others than my own fight. After lunch, my apprehension was growing as I looked at who I might be matched with for the battle. We went through a few rounds, and then my name came up. I was picked to fight the Jamaican. Now, that is not his real name. He went by that as he was very proud of his background. He was just a little bit taller than me with a very dark complexion, but his defining feature was his upper body. He was strong and well built, which was especially noticeable when he took off his jacket and we faced each other in our brown t-shirts. I am sure he could sense the fear in me as I stood in the circle preparing for the bout. The goal was to push the other person out of the circle. We had big gloves on our hands and we were wearing hockey goalie masks. Generally, the Jamaican was pretty quiet, complained a little, but I never saw him show strong emotion. Everything changed the moment drill sergeant gave the start sign. The Jamaican's face turned to rage and he let out a huge roar as he came at me with the stick. It was like one of those characters in a role-playing game. His roar froze me in my spot for a moment, but then I was on it, and our sticks hit each other diagonally with a long crack. I held for a moment, but his rage and sure strength won over, and I was quickly pushed from the circle and down to the ground. It was a short 5-second battle. Embarrassing, but afterwards a few of us talked about the rage in his eyes and the happiness that they didn't have to face the Jamaican. Man, I actually wanted one more shot at him. It wasn't to happen, however I did get my justice in our next activity. The Jamaican loses it. The day had come. We had talked about it, trained for it, but it was finally here. We were going through the gas chamber. Many times we carried our gas mask, technically called a protective mask, with us on our right thigh while we marched. While in formation, the drill sergeants would train us to put it on quickly with the yell of, "Gas, gas, gas!" We would have just a matter of seconds to close our eyes, hold our breath, get the mask on, clear the mask, start breathing, and get the mask cover over our shoulders. Those who didn't finish in time were put in the dirt for push-ups. We knew the day was coming when we had to test the mask for real, and it was finally here. We were marched out to the chamber and lined up. As we got closer to the building, I couldn't help but think of the Jews and the walk to their own gas chambers in World War II. The building looked that old and just as scary. There were times when you would get a whiff of the gas and it would start to water your eyes. We could hear some screams as the other soldiers exited the chamber. As we got closer, we could see the last group exiting before us on the other side, and then it was our turn. We got our masks on and sealed. The key was to make sure your mask was sealed with no leakage. This meant making sure the straps were tight. So tight, in fact, that it hurt, but I knew it was necessary. I always hated the protective mask, especially in training. The glasses we were issued didn't fit in the mask, so we were forced to take them off. This meant I couldn't see very well. Everything was a blurry mass as we approached the entrance. Our group was finally called and we went in. The Jamaica was in our group, just a couple of soldiers in front of me. We got in and the yelling began. All of the drill sergeants were there. We lined up against the wall. It was very dim in there, just a few flashlights allowing us to see where to go. From the minute we entered, the Jamaica was screaming loud. His mask was leaking and he wanted out. He was just told to stand there. We were told to unseal our masks, take them off, state our names and the last four of our social security number, then put the mask back on and reseal it. I was able to do this easily, but still inhaled much of the gas while stating my name. God, it was awful. My eyes burned and I felt like I was going to throw up. But I would survive. The Jamaican, not so much. He was yelling at the drill sergeants to let him out. He pushed his way past other soldiers and even pushed a drill sergeant to get to the door and out. As I said before, he was big and strong. Crazy to see him go berserk. A drill sergeant followed him out, obviously to have a talk or probably to yell at him. In the meantime, we were stuck inside for a little longer than necessary, and my mask started to leak some more. We were finally free and back in the daylight. We were told to walk slowly out to the clearing with our mask in one hand. Oh God, I felt sick. My eyes and face burned. It was like someone had thrown acid on it. It felt like my face was peeling off. My eyes were watering and there was snot coming out of my nose. I basically had no control of what was happening, and I still couldn't see without my glasses. However, the worst part was the feeling inside that I was going to throw up, but more like being bloated with a lot of gas. It was horrendous for a few minutes, and then the belching came. I have never belched that loud or that much, but after a minute or two of belching, it was over. No more pain and no more nausea. Whew, what a relief. Then the laughter came. Just like after the punishment in the sergeant's office with the rubber M16, the stress of the incident just made me laugh. While tear gas is an awful experience, it certainly wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And to see the Jamaican freak out like that was worth all the pain in the world. I had my revenge. Dear family, yesterday was the gas chamber, the first and really only time I was scared for my life. Not necessarily when I got inside, but waiting outside watching the others leave. Needless to say, my mask worked perfectly, unlike many others who had not paid attention to detail. I was told to take off my mask slightly and reseal it. Then I was told to take off my mask, say my name, and exit slowly towards the door. Boy, that tear gas is strong, and it hits fast, and it is effective. I came out barely able to see and ready to throw up, but of course unable to because my chest was so tight. Personally, I think if I had to do it again, I would feel little effects as a lot of it was due to nerves. Anyway, after a few minutes of walking and burping up that awful gas, I returned to almost a normal state. In fact, with the exception of my burning eyes, I felt much better about myself and actually got an almost natural high in knowing I succeeded. Also, before the chamber, one of my brackets was broken and I wasn't going to be allowed to go in. So I traded with someone else because that is how badly I wanted to go in and do it. I definitely proved to myself that I can do anything now. That was probably the worst thing I've ever done in my life, and I did it voluntarily. You should have seen the people panic inside. They had a leak and they freaked out. One guy actually pushed a drill sergeant out of the way to the door. What a lot of people don't understand is that they will remember who panicked and kept that in mind if we ever go to war. Because today I probably came as close as I will ever come to war. And to tell the truth, that is as close as I want to get. Range walk and no brass, no ammo. Monday we start BRM, Basic Rifle Management, the real training. Now I will learn how to be a fighting soldier. I just hope I do well because our platoon won the award for best average shoot out of the 40 last cycle. And our drill sergeants are counting us to do just as well. I have never been into guns. However, I have to admit, it was amazing going to the range and shooting an M16. After lots of training how to get your weapon apart and clean it, we were finally allowed to go to the range. The first step is aligning your weapon. One thing you never see in the movies is that the weapon is aligned to your eyesight and to the way of holding it. As a left-hander, I fired opposite from everyone else. As the practice range, we had to fire groups of shots and then use the shot group to adjust the sights on our rifle to match the pattern of firing so that it would be centered on the target. This was the boring part. We would shoot a few shots, wait for everyone else to finish, and then walk to the target and evaluate. We were told to range walk. Range walk is all about walking fast, but not running. If you run, you're in big trouble. You would check your shot group and adjust your sights until your shot group was in the bullseye. The problem, of course, is that as a beginner, my 3-shot group was never in a group where I could adjust properly. This meant going back and firing again and again until I could adjust my sights and get a shot group to meet the drill sergeant's standards. If you could never get a decent shot group, it could mean repeating basic training. Luckily, I passed, but it took a really long time. It is about aiming carefully and breathing at just the right moment. Some hold their breath while others shoot right as they breathe out. For the range, it was all about safety, and they take it very seriously. I saw privates pulled right from their foxholes. I saw someone dragged off when they turned their rifle to the side instead of facing it downrange at all times, and so much more. But the funniest thing was when we left the range at the end of the day. First of all, they made us gather all of the brass. This is the expelled cartridges from firing. Didn't they have an assistant for this task? Then we left the range and had to stand in formation with our weapons cleared and open on our shoulders. The drill sergeant would come behind us and check each weapon with a metal rod to make sure there wasn't a bullet in the chamber. We had to say, "No brass, no ammo, drill sergeant!" It just always makes me laugh, and I have used this saying so many times over the years when someone would ask me if I had something. The reason, of course, is that if we were to take a live bullet with us off the range, who knows what would happen, especially if a private got really mad. In fact, so many times during my military career, even combat areas, I was given a weapon with no ammo. Safety first, I guess. Dear family, by the way, things worked out great the last time I shot. It was about 36 degrees outside on Saturday, and we were out there. I took 6 shots and put them 1/4 of an inch from the bullseye. I had a great person coaching me, and now I am confident with my shooting ability and passing the test next Saturday. Blood blisters and my trip to the doctor. We marched everywhere in basic training. There were so few times we actually got to ride a bus or a truck. The reality of my small boots from the rush and transition finally came to a head after a brutal march out to a range for shooting practice. It was probably an 8-mile march that day. I could tell I was getting blisters on the march back, but I had no idea it was that bad. I had huge blood blisters on both back heels. When I looked at them, I was shocked. The red blisters covered my entire heels. They were at least golf ball sized on both. They were pinkish red, and I could tell they were filled with blood ready to escape. With more marching coming the next day, I knew that I wasn't going to make it without help. This meant a trip to the infirmary the next morning. Going to the doctor is not an easy task in basic training. I mean, obviously, if you're sick, they let you go, but there were those soldiers who milked the system by going frequently. The problem others didn't realize is that there was some training that was required. If you missed it, you couldn't graduate on time. After being thoroughly questioned by my drill sergeant, I was allowed permission to go to the doctor. Along with the other sick ones, we were taken in a special bus to the medical center. It was surreal being there, because there were no drill sergeants with us to supervise. I had heard some of the other soldiers using this as a way to get contraband like cigarettes, candy, and soda, because there was a small shopette at the medical center and no one knew if you bought something. I was much too concerned about getting into trouble to try something like that. Anyway, the appointment was similar to others I had with doctors when I was a civilian. They sat me down and examined my heels. I could see the shock in their faces. The young assistant, a specialist not much older than me, was given the nasty task of cutting and draining the blisters. With that done, I was bandaged up and given the greatest of all documents, the profile. This document is like a work release. It meant no PT and no marching for the next 5 days, and I got to wear my running shoes instead of the boots. I left the medical center and waited for the return shuttle back to my unit. It was weird because, for that moment, I was alone at the bus stop. Being alone is something you only get on the toilet in the Army, and even then, it is a crowded latrine with people telling you to hurry up and clench those butt cheeks and pinch it off. So to have 15 minutes sitting there alone was an amazing experience. What were my friends doing right now? I had been gone for more than 2 months. This was a time before the internet or cell phones, so I was alone with my thoughts. I dreamed of a cold Coca-Cola in one hand and driving my car really fast through the mountain towns with the other. I dreamed of listening to music, my music, instead of the goddamn cadence. I imagined waking up in my own bed to the sounds of the birds chirping. I imagined hanging out at a party with my friends from back home, just drinking a beer and watching a movie. My daydream was interrupted by the arrival of the shuttle. I returned to the barracks and sat with the two other soldiers on the cold bleachers waiting. It was weird because usually this area was bustling with soldiers doing laundry, polishing boots, or talking on the phones, but now it was silent. Then a drill sergeant passed by and yelled, "What the hell are you doing here?" We explained, and he said to get up now. If we didn't get out to the range right now, we would miss the live fire. Like I said, some training was critical, and this was one of those days. We needed to test on live fire of our M16 to graduate. The drill sergeant was pissed off. What were we doing just sitting there when we needed to be at the range firing? He got us all into a green Ford military truck and drove us out to the range. We got to the live range and were put in the last group for the day. I was stressed out, but knew I was ready. The range was different than practice. It had pop-up targets that appeared at ranges from 50 to 300 meters. The goal, obviously, was to knock all of them down. Sometimes two targets would pop up in unison, one close and one far away. On that day, I finally performed like I needed to. I was popping targets right and left. In the end, I passed, marksman. A good score, but not perfect. It would take until I made my regular duty to ace the test. Ooh, look at the pretty lights. One night, we got to combine my favorite part of basic with my least favorite. It was night shooting with the protective mask on. This time it was different. With the protective mask on, we were supposed to try and sight targets downrange and hit them. Here's the problem, though. It is almost impossible to hold the rifle against your face in such a way that you can see through the little mask holes. And to add to this, I still didn't have glasses that fit under the mask. So I was pretty much half blind trying to fire into the dark at targets I couldn't even see. The fun part, though, was the bullets contained tracer rounds, one for every 3 to 4 bullets. Oh man, these were cool. It was like shooting off bottle rockets, except that these were green flashes and you could direct them. You could see the tracer bullet as it ricocheted off the ground or the target, and sometimes, just for fun, some of us would shoot them above the target and watch them shoot off past the range and much further away, bouncing off in the hills in the distance. I would love to have a chance at this range again, sans mask. Obstacle course, or how many ways can they find to rack your balls? Dear family, after bivouac on Thursday, we did the Fit to Run endurance course that had tunnels and hills and many unique things to go through. Then we ran our best man against the 3 other platoons in Company D. We came in second, and for the first time ever, we were a team yelling for our fellow soldiers. We are in our 3rd week, and we are assigned 58 recruits to start. So far, 1 is left on medical, 2 more are leaving on medical next week, and 1 is almost out on mental problems. Other than that, most people are surviving. It was a nice fall day in Fort Jackson, not too hot or too cold, and we were off for another long march. We were told that today was the obstacle course day. We only went a few times, but it was another opportunity for our platoon to go up against the other ones in the building, a chance for honor from our drill sergeant, or defeat and embarrassment, and he would roll up our flag. This seemed to be a big deal to the drill sergeants. A furled flag meant we weren't even good enough to march with our flag to our honor. Yes, they had pulled me in, just like you are pulled in as a fan of a football team, and the wins or losses affect how you feel mentally. It is no different. It is all we had out here. We didn't have much contact with the outside world or the news, and we didn't have any television, so I was looking for redemption as well. Our platoon hadn't functioned much as a team, with the 4 different personalities and all different cultures. Just keeping the barracks clean without killing each other was a plus. At the moment we were marched out to the obstacle course, our flag was once more tucked under the cloth, and we were just hoping for some success. The obstacle course went through the woods surrounding the base. It went up and down hills, and there were plenty of different tasks, from climbing walls to going through tunnels. There were a number of these logs that we had to shimmy across. It was on practice 1 that I racked my balls for the first time. The drill sergeant even had a good laugh, but sure enough, 1 or 2 more soldiers suffered the same fate, and I wasn't alone. The course ended with coming up on top of a hill and then jumping down into a pit of sand at the crossing the finish line. We went through the course in groups of 4, one from each platoon in the building. It was the first time that I saw our whole platoon together, cheering each other on, encouraging everyone to finish strong. And then came the battle. We would choose one soldier from our platoon to run again, to face the battle once again, with the winner adding a special pennant to our flag. With every group, we chose the strongest battle-tough soldier. I think every group has to have one or two, those men who just look like soldiers from day one. The soldiers that can step up to the target with an M16 and hit the bullseye on the first try. The ones that can stay in the dirt forever doing push-ups without stopping. And the ones that can already finish the final PT test on day 1 without even trying. We had chosen, and we were ready. We could only see the start and the finish, so we had no idea who was ahead until they reached the top of the hill. Our drill sergeant was there, hoping to be honored, and we were ready. The gun went off, and we cheered, yelled, and generally just had a great time. Then the first soldier came up to the top of the hill, not our man, but ours was close behind. They both jumped down. In the end, we didn't win, but a respectable second place. This worked. While we didn't get the pennant, it was clear the drill sergeant was happy to see our enthusiasm, the team camaraderie, and that we tried our best. The flag was unfurled, and it waved in the light breeze. The march home that night was much easier than the march out. Cadence calling, marching to a new beat. Dear family, cadence break. Way down in the valley, I heard a mighty roar. It was the mighty, mighty third herd, using deuces for a toy. So put your foot on the pedal, press hard on the gas, move over deuces, and let the real men pass. Just thought I would write you to give you an idea of what we marched to. You know, I really thought I would like such structured life. I do, but what I don't think I like is how proper everything is. For instance, whenever a drill sergeant enters the barracks, we have to call at ease and come to a position of parade rest. What really bothers me is, unlike in a real business, you cannot be informal with your superiors. It is funny to see my drill sergeants running to their first sergeant whenever he calls. They have to kiss up just as much as we do. Although I don't like that much, it is an interesting learning experience which I will never forget. All the way through basic and into my regular unit, I loved marching and sounding to cadence. Not sure why, but I just enjoyed sounding off. It helped to keep my breathing in check. It was especially enjoyable when the drill sergeant could sing. I also enjoyed learning new cadence calls when we would have substitute sergeants to march us around. They put a new step in our beat and gave us something fun to sing. Falling asleep while marching. We trained all the time, and the thing you learned in basic is that they like to save money. I mean, there's no reason to drive somewhere when you can march. Sometimes in the marches we would just carry a canteen in our protective masks, but other times we headed out overnight. So we had our big rucksacks. That is a backpack to you civilian folks. The rucksack was filled with all our essentials: change of clothes, toiletries, entrenching tool, which is a shovel, tent half, and sleeping bag. The rucksack probably weighed 40 or 50 pounds. In this case, we were off for an 8-mile march where we would be sleeping overnight and then go to the shooting ranges the next day. The problem for me was that I had pulled fire duty from 2 to 4 in the morning, so I had very little sleep. Throughout basic, I had learned certain ways to sort of doze off or phase out while marching. Sometimes I would think about other things, but mainly I just tried to be in a zombie-like state, not really present. During this march, though, something was different. The week had taken its toll, and I was tired, very tired. About 5 miles into the march, I was dozing a lot, with my head falling to my chest before I would jerk up awake. It was a straight road, so not much to really see or do, just the constant barrage of cadence. And then it happened. I dozed again with my head falling to my chest, and my boot caught on a slight bump in the road, causing me to trip and fall forward. I went to the ground, but the worst part was my rucksack also flipped forward and over my head. This left me stranded on the ground, on my knees, stuck to the ruck, but unable to flip it back on my back because it weighed so much. I couldn't move, sort of like a turtle stuck on its back. Meanwhile, soldiers were going around me, trying not to get in trouble for breaking formation. Finally, a fellow soldier realized my predicament and flipped my rucksack back on my back, and I was able to get up to my knees now. By now, the rest of the platoon was another 300 meters ahead of me, still marching, and coming up fast was the drill sergeant walking slower with all the slackers who had fallen out. I was off and running. Do you know how hard it is to run with a 50-pound rucksack on your back? Okay, so I waddled back into formation. It took me a while to catch up, but I promise I was awake the rest of the trip. The rest of the soldiers also had a good laugh at my expense as we set up our tents after I told them the story. Luckily, I only ended with a few scrapes and bruises on my elbows and knees as a memory. Mind games, or soldier, what the hell are you doing? Every day before falling out of PT formation and heading up to clean up, we were told what to bring down to the formation for the day. Sometimes it was full gear, sometimes it was jacket and gloves, and sometimes just a canteen. One day we were told just a canteen and helmet. After cleanup, I wanted to make sure I got down there on time for formation. What was weird is that everyone was moving slow that morning. I finally gave up on everyone and headed down on my own. In basic, it's always weird when you are alone, because you are never alone. When you are alone, you are probably in the wrong place. It was like that day. Even though I had read the board clearly and the plan for the day, I was alone and shouldn't be. That is when the drill sergeant came, yelling at me. Soldier, what the hell are you doing down here? This isn't even the right gear. Get back upstairs now. In fact, I did have the right gear, and actually I was one of the only people in the right place on time. I was tempted to argue with him, but I didn't feel like getting all sweaty again before chow. Mind games. They had decided to change what they were doing today, and I had the wrong gear. It threw me off, got me out of step, made me wonder what I was doing. I hated that, but I knew that I just had to roll with it. Get down, soldier. Dear family, it is funny because we started a new game in the barracks. Privates can drop other privates for breaking the rules. The funny part is we can all imitate the drill sergeants. We have found that imitating them is the only way to cheer us up. And let me tell you, some people do excellent impressions. We had a big meeting without drill sergeants to discuss how to win back our honor. I think a lot of people really care, but there are still a few people who screw off. I don't think I mentioned it, but I weigh 140 pounds, 9 pounds more than when I left. And I tell you, I feel good about my body. No caffeine in 4.5 weeks. Pretty good, huh? But God, I am craving it. Love, Mike. Laying on a helmet. Dear family, well, on Friday, a soldier in our platoon blatantly purchased a radio from the PX and returned to the barracks with it. Needless to say, he was caught. Also, 3rd Squad went into the PX without notifying the proper people, and they were also caught. Conclusion, all current squad leaders were fired, our flag was rolled up, and our platoon was put in disgrace. Also, we received the workout of our lives by the drill sergeant. It was so bad one soldier cracked and broke into tears. Personally, the workout was great exercise. Anyway, we lost all our privileges, including the phone. I was not pleased at the time because I didn't get to go to the PX, and I'm running low on stamps and envelopes. Hopefully, by the end of the week, we will get some of our privileges back. Our new squad leaders are doing a great job, and we are getting better. Normally, after dinner, mail call, and meetings, we would get some time to ourselves to clean the barracks, take showers, go to latrine, and prepare for the next day's events. However, one night, something changed. We were all getting ready for bed, and 2 of the sergeants came in yelling like madmen. We had to line up next to our bunks in whatever state of dress we were in. Privates in the shower were ushered out and told to put something on. We were told that someone had violated the rules and they needed to know who it was. Get out your steel helmets now, Drill Sergeant Thomas yelled at us. This was strange. What were we going to do with this? We were told to put the helmet down on the floor and lay on it. So the helmet was on our chest. Instantly, I could hear the groans from the fellow soldiers. Once I had my helmet in position, I understood the problem. The helmet cut right into the chest, making it difficult to breathe. We were told to put our hands behind our backs, making all the pressure directed to our chest. Now that I have your attention, Thomas continued, tell me who did it. We looked at one another with quizzical glance. What the hell was he talking about? 2 of you snuck out and went to the shopette without permission, he continued. I had no idea who it was. But what the hell were those idiots thinking? Mass punishment is always the worst, especially in the Army. It never made sense to me. Why should I get punished for something I didn't do? But this was the way things worked, especially when they needed information. We can do this all night, Thomas continued as we walked around the barracks. The good news is he didn't stop moving most of the time, so there was those brief moments when we knew he was on the other side of the barracks and you could at least put your hands down to relieve the pressure of the helmet in the chest. Tell me who did this and we can end it. It was starting to get really painful, and I could see the pain in the eyes of my bunkmate Green through the tears of pain forming in my own eyes. Mass punishment, damn, this sucks. We get so little time every night to ourselves anyways, and now some idiots tried to break the rules to go to the store. However, I knew better than to complain, so I kept my mouth shut. You never want to single yourself out in these situations. It will only bring you more trouble. It was getting harder to breathe. Then a moment of reprieve. Soldiers, front reading rest position now. We got some relief from the steel pot and could go into front push-up position. Then, just as quickly as we had some relief, it was back to the helmet with an order from the drill sergeant. I can't breathe. Just admit if you did it. We will find out, I promise you, bellowed the drill sergeant again. That is when we heard it from the other side. It was Red, as he was known. He was a little smaller than most of us, and he complained a lot when drill sergeants weren't looking. I didn't do anything, drill sergeant. Why are you punishing me? Red wailed through the sound of the sobs. Uh-oh, they had broken him. Unless you have something to tell, soldier, you better shut your fucking mouth, or I will make it worse for everyone. The screams were directed at Red as the drill sergeant got in his face. We could hear the sobs and more pleading. But, drill sergeant, why me? I didn't do anything. Again the yells, this time from some of the soldiers around me, yelling to Red to shut the fuck up. I watched the clock. We were now past regular lights out time. How long would this go on? More sobs from Red, but he was thankfully quiet and not complaining aloud anymore. I honestly never found out what happened after that. Maybe I blacked out from the lack of oxygen, or someone confessed, but after about 15 minutes more of switching from helmet to push-ups, it was done. We were told to stand at parade rest, and the drill sergeant told us lights out would be in 10 minutes and to get our asses moving. Damn. That was the most painful thing I have ever been in so far. That was not an exercise I wanted to repeat, ever. I wonder if the steel helmet left permanent marks on my chest. Incidentally, the next morning, Red was a changed soldier. He no longer complained except when the floors weren't cleaned, and he didn't have anything squared away. He became the model soldier. They had definitely broken him that night. He would run to the drill sergeants for every duty and was always cleaning. So I guess the drill sergeants won that round.